Is the screen visible to all? The process of annexation of Indian states. I'll do a recap of what.
No, ma'am.
Okay. I'm stopping the share. I'll share again. And please be patient. It takes some time to appear on the screen.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Now it's visible.
Very good. Very good. We will start with a recap of what we have covered for the section 2 yesterday, how the company rule expanded. Okay. Before that, we have done few activities and how gradually the British Empire was acquiring territories. What was the system? What was the process they followed to annex the various Indian territories and Indian states and appoint puppet rulers in various kingdoms? We'll start from that part. Section 2, company rule expands. I would appreciate if you all are on time because still some students are joining in and it is very distracting for me to admit you while I'm in the middle of a lecture. Please be punctual. So, okay, now I'm starting with the explanation here. So yesterday we discussed about how the process of annexation started. Initially, the British East India Company was not very comfortable in doing the administration of the Indian states because there were few barriers for them. They did not understand the Indian society and the polity of India, how the administration was carried out by the earlier kingdoms and how the emperor was taking care of the various states, how the revenue was collected. So all these things and the language barrier. So initially they started appointing residents of India only to in these states to control the territories and give them to do all the official record work also. So instead of any military attacks, they did not do any military attacks. Instead, what they did was they used variety of political, economic, and diplomatic methods to extend its influence before annexing an Indian kingdom. Let me tell you, children, here when we're talking about annexation, the number of British soldiers or British troops would be very less compared to the Indian population. So if you want to control such a large number of population in the country, so initially you will begin with friendly relations with them, and then you appoint. Who is this? Who is this? Shaurya? What happened, Shaurya? Please keep your mind on mute. No disturbance in the class. Let me just mute all of you. Just wait a minute. This is very distracting. Please don't annotate on the screen also, and no annotations on the screen, and no starting the mic on your own. And I'll just mute all of you. Yes. So what was the beginning process was the East India Company followed was they instead of military attacks, the British East India Company used variety of political, economic, and diplomatic methods to extend its influence before annexing any Indian kingdom. And there on they started making new policies, diplomatic policies to acquire various territories, the Indian kingdoms in India, and one of them was a subsidiary alliance. Okay, initially they appointed resident Indians, political and commercial. So political and commercial will be both different. When you're talking about political, they wanted some ministers who they choose for the administration or puppet rulers. When we're talking about commercial, so they had their middlemen to carry out the commercial activities, as they had various other barriers of language and administration and maintaining administration, because they were an entirely different race altogether. They had the number of troops was very less. Number of Britishers in India would compared to the Indian population would be very less. So initially they were very slowly and gradually they started acquiring territories in India. And also they initially very slowly they started interfering in the internal affairs of the Indian states, and they decided who will be the successor of a throne and appointed in administrative posts. Just like in the doctrine of lapse with Rani Lakshmi Bai, you will be studying that in great detail in the coming slides. We're coming to that. So the first policy that they followed was the subsidiary alliance. We're going to cover that. Different policies. So apart from political, economic, and diplomatic, they also they waged few wars with certain kingdoms who were not very easy to control. Two of those empires were, or we can say the kingdoms, very strong kingdoms, was the Mysore, the kingdom of Mysore, and the kingdom of the Marathas. The Marathas, they could not control in any case, and eventually after the last Anglo-Maratha war, they had to crush the Marathas completely by the early 19th century, and then they completely acquired the Maratha territory. We will be coming and we will be going into further details about how they captured these two main kingdoms. Against them, they had to wage wars. Apart from that, various other kingdoms were there, but then the first policy that they followed was the subsidiary alliance. According to this alliance, any Indian rulers were not allowed to have their independent army. Children, be very, very sincere and be very carefully listen to these new policies that the Britishers were adopting to control territories, because this is very important from your exam point of view. Okay, so the first policy is the policy of subsidiary alliance. According to this alliance, the Indian rulers were not allowed to have their independent army. So if you don't have an army, how to protect your kingdom? So they had to pay to the company for the subsidiary forces, which means the East India Company will provide their own troops to the king, and they will protect that kingdom. And in return of the services of the subsidiary forces, which the company was supposed to maintain for their protection, the king or the Indian ruler was supposed to make certain amount of payments. Suppose you are keeping an army, you have to give them their salaries. Every month you have to give them the salaries. So instead of keeping your own army, you have to depend on the East India Company to provide you troops for your protection. You have to provide payments and the salaries to these subsidiary forces. And in case if you are unable to make these payments, so what will be the repercussion? The repercussion will be that a part of your territory will be taken away as a penalty by the East India Company. I hope the subsidiary alliance is clear to all of you. So they made alliances with the Indian kings, the kings of various kingdoms, that if you sign this alliance, if you become our ally, then what will happen? We will provide you troops for your protection, you pay us the salary, and in case if you're not able to make any payments, in case you are running out of payment money, then in that case some part of your kingdom's territory will be taken away as a penalty. Is this clear? Any doubt here about the subsidiary alliance? What was the subsidiary alliance? Please raise your hands and note down questions. We can discuss it in further detail also. Any doubt here, children? Yes, Omkar, if you have a doubt, let me know.
Ma'am, if the enemy kingdom attack the dynasty which the subsidiary, they have signed the subsidiary alliance, so the Britishers army would will fight for them.
Yes, that is true. So the British will provide the troops for the protection of that kingdom. That was the idea. So which meant that the ruler cannot have his own independent army. So this was a tactic that they were applying very slowly to acquire the territories in India. This was one of the policies they started with. So initially they were trying to be your friends, and then they say that we are your friends, and you sign our subsidiary alliance, and we will provide you troops for your protection. Whenever any other kingdom wages a war against you, we will provide you the troops, but you have to make a payment to pay the salaries of these subsidiary forces. And in case if you're not able to pay the salary, then you will have to give us some part of your territory as a penalty. Any other question related to the subsidiary alliance?
Oh, ma'am.
Okay, good. So here we have two examples, children. Please remember them carefully. Nawab of Awadh was forced to give away some part of his territory, almost half of the territory of the kingdom of Awadh. In which year? In the year 1801, as he was unable to pay for the subsidiary forces. And similar was the case with the Nawab of Hyderabad. So children, this may come in your map work also. We may put a question like this, that okay, under the subsidiary alliance, which particular kingdom was annexed by the British? You may get a multiple choice question if in your exam on a subsidiary, as per the subsidiary alliance, which Indian kingdom was annexed by the East India Company? Okay, any doubt here, children? You can ask right now if you have any queries. Okay, so please
No,
remember
ma'am.
the kingdom of
Ma'am,
yes,
excuse me, ma'am.
yes.
Ma'am, if the war is between Britishers and one kingdom, if the kingdom has a subsidiary force, so that force can attack that kingdom.
You are confused here. Let me explain this to you again, beta. See, there the alliance is between the British East India Company and the kingdom which is ready for that. For example, the Nawab of Awadh and the Nawab of Hyderabad, they signed the subsidiary alliance with the East India Company as friends. So what was the alliance all about? That your forces, the East India Company's troops and the forces, subsidiary forces, will protect the Nawab of Awadh, the kingdom of Awadh and the kingdom of Hyderabad. And in return, the Nawab has to pay the salaries and make the payments for the forces of these which the East India Company was providing. Now, if Awadh is waging a war against, let's say, Bengal, for example, in your previous section, we have learned about how Siraj-ud-Daulah waged a war against East India Company. So at that time, the Nawab of Awadh, Shuja-ud-Daulah, was with the East India Company against Siraj-ud-Daulah of Bengal. So now there's a war between the Nawab of Bengal and the Nawab of Awadh. Right? Now here, the forces and troops are being provided by the East India Company. Now here the Nawab of Awadh has to make payment for the protection of the kingdom of Awadh. And now what happens is, if you are unable to make the payment, what will happen? Some part of your territory, of your kingdom, will be taken away by the East India Company. So it was a very cunning tactic that the East India Company used to annex various territories in the Indian kingdoms. And I will cover one by one. And two of the powers which they were not able to annex very easily was the kingdom of Mysore and the Maratha powers. Okay, the kingdom of the Marathas. These two were the most difficult, kingdoms, or the rulers, which they were not easily able to control. I will come one by one. We will begin with Mysore first. Okay, so here I hope everybody has understood what was a subsidiary alliance and the two kingdoms which were annexed by the British. Not only these two, but there were many other kingdoms, many other territories, small territories were acquired by the East India Company using the subsidiary alliance. Any doubt here?
Ma'am,
Yes.
that time who was the Nawab of Awadh?
Nawab of Awadh was Shuja-ud-Daulah. Children, there were three Nawabs. Earlier there was, initially that was Safdarjung was the Nawab, and after Safdarjung, Shuja-ud-Daulah. During the war with Siraj-ud-Daulah of Bengal, at that time, Shuja-ud-Daulah was the last Nawab of Awadh. Okay, so when we are here, we're talking about 1801. So Nawab Shuja-ud-Daulah was the Nawab of Awadh during those times. Any other query here? Okay, good. Shall we proceed from here? Okay. Now, children, let's do a quick activity here. What power did the resident have? Children, when we are talking about the resident here means the puppet rulers or the administrators of various kingdoms or ministers who were appointed by the British East India Company. Because these rulers, the puppet rulers, were under pressure by the East India Company, and they had to follow any kind of administrative decisions, as the East India Company had started interfering in the internal affairs of various states in India. Okay, so here you have a picture of James Mill. He was a very popular historian. About him we have studied in the first lesson, James Mill's periodization of history, and he periodized history on the basis of religion, Hindu history, Muslim period, and then the colonial period. Remember, in the first lesson we have studied about him. Yes, so this is a picture of James Mill, the famous British historian who wrote something about the residents. Residents here refers to the Indian rulers or any Indian officials who were appointed by the East India Company. So let's have a look at that activity. I'll just quickly share one screen with you from your book. Is this screen visible to all? What power did the resident have? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me just read it out for you. This is what James Mill, the famous economist and political philosopher from Scotland, wrote about the residents appointed by the company. So let's very carefully read this. We place a resident who really is king of the country, whatever injunctions of non-interference he may act under, as long as the prince acts in perfect subservience. Subservience means जैसा हम कहते हैं वैसा वो तुम करते जाओ, तब तक तो ठीक है. Okay, here we are talking about a puppet ruler, and does what is agreeable to the residents, that is to the British government. Things go on quietly. Things go on very smoothly till the puppet ruler is agreeing to everything which the East India Company is saying. Everything goes very, very smoothly. They are managed without the resident appearing much in the administration of affairs. But when anything of a different nature happens, different nature means if somebody starts rebelling, that is something which is of a different nature. So here it is very clearly explained how the British East India Company was interfering in the internal matters of all the kingdoms in India, how they gradually started this. And the moment the prince takes a course which the British government think is wrong, then comes clashing and disturbance. Okay, submissiveness, subservience means submissiveness, and injunction means instruction. Here on this page itself, the meaning is given. Any doubt about this activity, children? I hope you have understood what James Mill is trying to convey here. Any doubt? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
No, ma'am.
Okay, good. So James Mill was the famous English historian who did the periodization of history, about which we discussed in the first lesson. And that is why I did this activity, so that you understand how a British historian will write. On the other hand, if an Indian historian is writing, he will not write history in this manner. So whenever a historian is writing, his own bias affects his writing. Okay, now let me share the screen of the PPT again. Yeah, so we are done with the activity. Now let's move ahead. Now we will start with the subsidiary military confrontation and subsidiary alliance. As I was telling you, children, you have already understood what the subsidiary alliance was. Now, how it was not easy for the British East India Company to confront Tipu Sultan of the Kingdom of Mysore. We are going to cover that now. Okay, so here we have studied that in your previous class also about the Anglo-Mysore wars. There were 4 wars. You can see, children, 4 wars happened between the Kingdom of Mysore and the British East India Company. I have mentioned the years. Between the first war was between Hyder Ali. Hyder Ali was the father of Tipu Sultan and the king of the Kingdom of Mysore between 1767 to 1669. He was a very, very powerful and a very intelligent warrior, and he won his battle against the East India Company in the first war. In the second war, from 1780 to 84, both the father and son were there, and this war also was won by Mysore only, and in 1782 Hyder Ali died because of natural causes. His death happened. So after that, his son, his able son Tipu Sultan took over, and he was successful in the second war. Okay, and then the third war was between the years 1790 to 1792. Now, children, during this third battle between the in this third Anglo-Mysore war, what happened was Tipu Sultan had to sign a treaty with the British East India Company. And and at this particular time, the Marathas and some other, and the Nizam of Hyderabad, some of the other rulers also joined hands with the East India Company against Tipu Sultan. You already know a lot about him. We have studied in the previous class that he was an able warrior. He was an intellectual. He was well educated. He appreciated the Western thoughts, and he had his connections in various European countries, and he was most influenced by the French Revolution. Also, he had connections with France. Also, he did his shipbuilding. He was a very able administrator and a ruler of the kingdom of. Yes.
He invented the rocket.
No, there are various other things we will talk about. He mainly focused on the shipbuilding. You're talking about the missile. Yes, he did, and it is very popular story is there about the invention of the missile and also shipbuilding. Also, he took keen interest in the affairs of his state, and also when we're talking about the building of the missile and the cannon that he had invented. There's a famous television series also which is known as the Sword of Tipu Sultan. You can watch on DD National also if you are able to download. It is a very famous TV serial which gives you the entire story of the life of Hyder Ali, the father of Tipu Sultan, and Tipu Sultan himself. He was a very, very able administrator and a very, very brave soldier. Okay, so I was talking to you about the third battle, the Anglo-Mysore War. In this particular war, what happened was, here this picture shows you what happened. The company forces were defeated by Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan in several battles, which means the previous two battles. But in the third battle, what happened was in 1792, attacked by the combined forces of the Marathas, the Nizam of Hyderabad, and the company. Now, what happened was Tipu was forced to sign a treaty with the British by which two of his sons were taken away as hostages. You can see, children, in this picture, two of his children were taken away as hostages by the British so that Tipu does not attack the East India Company again. And here in this particular picture, you can see Lord Cornwallis is receiving his two sons, the two sons of Tipu Sultan, in the year 1793 as hostages. This painting is painted by Daniel Orme. Tipu Sultan had 4 sons, and after his death also, after he was killed in the final war of 1798 and 99, after his death also, all his 4 sons were kept as hostages in a nearby city of Srirangapatnam. Okay, so this tells you the story of how Tipu Sultan was not easy to kneel down in front of East India Company, and he fought bravely against the British East India Company and tried to protect his kingdom till his death. Okay, but how is it that he was defeated? Let me tell you, just like in the case of Siraj-ud-Daulah of Bengal, we had the traitor. We had who was the traitor? Mir Jafar was the traitor. Similarly, in the case of Tipu Sultan, also Mir Sadiq was one of his ministers in Tipu's court, who allegedly betrayed Tipu Sultan during the siege of Srirangapatnam, the final war. This is the only war in which Tipu Sultan lost the battle, and he died also. And it paved the way for the British victory. So after this, what happened after the death of Tipu Sultan, after the Tiger of Mysore died, they acquired the half of the territory of the kingdom of Mysore The rest of the territory was given to the Nizam of Hyderabad. How? In the subsidiary alliance. That is why in this particular slide I am mentioning military confrontation by Tipu Sultan, and later on after his death his entire kingdom was taken over by the British, half was taken by the East India Company, and because the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Marathas also joined hands with them, so some of the territory was given to these mainly to the Nizam of Hyderabad in this treaty. I hope this is clear to you children, and this is initially we have talked about the subsidiary alliance of helping out like friends and providing the forces to protect your kingdom. This is how the British started. And in the second, in this section we have seen in the case of the kingdom of Mysore, the military confrontation and the subsidiary eventually leading to a subsidiary alliance for the kingdom of Mysore. Any doubts here children? If you have any questions you can ask me right now. Shall we proceed further?
Ma'am, what is meant by hostages?
Hostages means they are, for example, you by threat, you threaten the king that I have your 2 sons, and if you try to attack us again, we will kill your children. So the children were kept as hostages. These 2 children that you see in the picture could never meet their father again. And they were taken as hostages in the year 1793. His eldest son's name was Hyder Ali. He named his eldest son Hyder Ali with the name of his father. So it's a very sad story. You can see how difficult it would have been for the father to give away 2 of his sons as hostages. It's a very emotional story about Tipu Sultan and how he tried to protect his kingdom and state from the British. Children, also because Tipu Sultan was a very brave soldier, very famous emperor and a king. So there are various legends about Tipu. So there's one famous legend I'll recite from your textbook. Let me share the screen with all of you. I hope you all are interested to know more about Tipu Sultan. So here's Tipu Sultan, the tiger of Mysore. Let me tell you the story here, the legend of Tipu. Okay, kings are often surrounded by legend and their powers glorified through folklore. Of course, he was a brave king. So people write stories about him which glorify the king. I hope you understand the meaning of glorification. Yeah. So here is a legend about Tipu Sultan, who became the ruler of Mysore in the year 1782 after the death of his father Hyder. It is said once he went hunting in the forest with a French friend. Okay. And then what happened was, there he came face to face with a tiger. His gun did not work and his dagger fell to the ground. He battled with the tiger unarmed until managed to reach down and pick up the dagger. You know what is a dagger? Dagger is a kind of a pistol, a gun. Okay. Finally, he was able to kill the tiger in the battle. After this, he came to be known as the Tiger of Mysore. This is a very famous story about Tipu Sultan. He had the image of the tiger on his flag also. He had a flag, so he kept the image of a tiger. Another image here, children, you can see this is a Tipu's toy tiger. And in figure 9, you can see this is a picture of a big mechanical toy that Tipu possessed. You can see a tiger mauling a European soldier. Mauling means killing, okay? When its handle was turned, the toy tiger roared and the soldier shrieked. This toy tiger is now kept in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. The British took it away when Tipu Sultan died defending his capital Srirangapatnam on 4th May 1799. Children, he fought bravely and he was assassinated on the main gate of his fort. He did not run away. Many of his servants, many of the ministers, they told him that you can safely run away from here. But he did not turn his back from his people. He came out and he fought very bravely against the British and he died there.
Tipu Sultan கிட்ட போனதாம் அந்த
Yes.
ஹேண்டில் பிடிச்சிருந்தா அந்த டைகர்
Yes. If you have any queries, please ask me. Children, we have just 8 minutes left. So now let me just cover, let me just go to the next kingdom. Now we'll come to the Maratha power now. So Maratha power was another power which was very difficult to control for the East India Company. So let me just share the screen with you now. Here I have already given you, told you the story of the legend of Tipu Sultan. Here is the this famous toy which is kept in the Victoria Museum in London. This is the picture of the famous toy you can see. So when you key it, then what happens is the tiger roars and the soldier shrieks. Okay, so this is the toy here. Now children, now we come to war with Marathas. Okay children, now when we talk about the Maratha kingdom, in your last class about the Marathas in the 18th century, you have known about Shivaji Maharaj, and after that you have learnt about how Peshwas, the three famous Peshwas, Balaji Vishwanath, Baji Rao and Balaji Baji Rao, and finally in the third battle of Panipat in 1761 he died. Okay, we have already studied that in your previous class. I hope you all remember. Yes, we had that lesson on the Maratha power. Okay.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
after the death of the famous Balaji Baji Rao, also there were further few more wars. 3 further wars were fought between the East India Company and the Marathas. So we had just covered till the mid, almost the later part of the 18th century in your previous class. So now here we are going to talk about how the Maratha power was completely crushed by the East India Company by the year 1818, which is the early 19th century. Okay, now here in this case, subsidiary alliance did not take place. As you can see, the Marathas were very strong and they were not, the kind of rulers who would easily kneel down against the East India Company. But the company had its own motive of acquiring the Maratha territory also. Now what they did, they waged a war. They had no other option because they knew that the Marathas will not sign any kind of a treaty or an alliance with them. So they waged wars against the Marathas. So what happened was the company wanted to destroy the Maratha power also by late 18th century and early 19th century. The Anglo-Maratha wars began after the death of the Peshwa, the last powerful Peshwa, Balaji Baji Rao, in 1761 in the third battle of Panipat. We have learned about Ahmad Shah Abdali before that, how he controlled Ahmad Shah Abdali. We have covered that in your previous class. Also, during these times, they were divided into various states under different chiefs. We have also learned about the various ministers under Shivaji Maharaj and under the Peshwas also in your previous class. So here the various chiefs were given certain territories in the Maratha Empire, and these main chiefs were known as the Sindhiyas, the Holkars, the Gaikwads and the Bhosle. Okay, these were 4 main chiefs in the 18th century who supported the Peshwas against the British. And it is because of these powerful chiefs that the Peshwas were so strong against the East India Company. Okay, now how the decline of Peshwas began, it started happening by the end of the 18th century after the Peshwa died in the 3 Anglo-Maratha wars that were fought in the Indian subcontinent between the Maratha Empire and the British East India Company. The first Anglo-Maratha war was between, if you can please stop that noise. Who is that? Please don't make any noise here, children. Okay. So first Anglo-Maratha war was fought between 1775 to 1782. Second Anglo-Maratha war was between 1803 to 1805 because the Marathas were resisting. They were not very easy, giving up easily. And finally, the third Maratha war happened. Is also known as the Pindari War between 1817 to 1818. And in this final war, the Maratha power was finally completely crushed and the company acquired the complete control over the Vindhyan territories. You already know about the Vindhya mountains and the entire Maratha Empire. So this is when they were completely, the Marathas were the last to be completely controlled here as a power in India. Okay, now here in this particular section on Marathas children here, there was no subsidiary alliance, you can see here as the policy goes. So here the British had no other option but to wage a war against them and completely crush them. Now we come to the next policy, the fourth policy here, the claim of paramountcy. Okay, this policy they followed under the new governor, the East India Company's governor, Lord Francis Rawdon Hastings. His tenure was between 1813 to 1823. He started this new policy of paramountcy. So now, what was the policy of paramount? Okay, so the company was now becoming, after the Mysore and the Maratha wars, they were becoming more and more aggressive, and they were becoming more and more greedy to acquire the Indian states. Who was that? Can you please let me know? Who was that?
Ma'am, Akhil Bhosle something.
Please make sure that you are on mute. Otherwise, I'm muting everyone. I'm not going to allow you to unmute. Okay, so now what was the claim of paramountcy here? We have just 1.5 minutes left, so let me just quickly complete this part. Under this policy, the company claimed that its authority was paramount, or the most important one. So everybody has to follow them, or supreme. Hence, its power was greater than that of Indian states. They said that they are more powerful, they are more civilized, so everybody should follow what the British East India Company is telling them to do. And this policy was started by the new governor, Lord Francis Rawdon Hastings, between 1813 to 1823. So the British, this policy, the British East India Company was justified in annexing any Indian states. But then this again, for this kind of a policy also, we have some rebels, especially Rani Chennamma was Maharani Jhansi Ki Rani Lakshmi Bai. Similarly, in the state of Kittur in present-day Karnataka, there was a queen. Her name was the Queen Chennamma. She rebelled against this policy of paramountcy, and in 1824, and finally she died also in the year 1829. She died also. Okay, so this is another the claim of paramountcy. Okay. Then in tomorrow's class, I will cover the kingdom of Jhansi, and I will also cover the doctrine of lapse, the policy of doctrine of lapse. We are about to finish with this lecture. Yes, Omkar, quickly ask your question.